The rain fell like tears against the glass window of the small roadside diner, the kind of place that smelled of coffee, old wood, and quiet memories. Outside, the sky hung heavy and gray, and the world seemed to have forgotten warmth. Inside, a man sat alone in the corner booth, his back straight, his eyes hollow, his fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug he hadn't yet sipped from. His name was Daniel Hayes, a man who once had everything, a family, a thriving construction business, a laughter-filled home. But that was before life stripped him bare, one cruel storm at a time. It was his 48th birthday that night, though no one knew it. Not the waitress who gave him a polite smile and a plate of meatloaf, not the cook behind the counter wiping grease from his hands, and certainly not the strangers who passed him by without a glance. Daniel didn't expect anyone to remember. After his wife passed away 2 years ago and his daughter left for college across the country, birthdays had become nothing more than a reminder of everything that wasn't there anymore. He thought he'd eat alone. He always did. But that night, fate had a different plan. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the magic of human connection, please take a second to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us share more stories that remind the world love still exists. The bell above the diner door jingled sharply, and a gust of cold air blew in. Daniel barely looked up until he heard the soft, apologetic voice of a woman saying, "Excuse me? Sir?" Her tone carried the kind of hesitation that comes from swallowing pride. He turned, his tired eyes meeting hers, a young woman, maybe early 30s, soaked from the rain, holding the small hand of a boy who couldn't have been older than 7. The boy's cheeks were red from the cold, and his stomach gave a soft, betraying growl that made the mother's face flush with embarrassment. She offered a timid smile. "I'm sorry to bother you. My son's hungry and we don't really have anywhere to go for now. Do you mind if we stay a while? I promise we won't be a bother." For a moment, Daniel didn't answer. The old version of himself, the man who once had enough to give, would have welcomed them without a thought. But that man had been buried under debt, loneliness, and grief long ago. He looked down at his half-eaten meal, at the second fork still wrapped in napkin across from him, an old habit he couldn't break, setting the table for his late wife without realizing it. His chest tightened. Slowly he gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit," he murmured. The woman's eyes softened in relief. She guided her boy into the booth, wringing out her wet scarf before sitting down. The boy's wide, curious eyes darted to Daniel's plate. Daniel noticed, and without a word slid the plate toward him. "Eat," he said simply. The boy hesitated, looking up at his mother for permission. She nodded gently, and within seconds he began eating, small bites at first, then hungrily, like someone who hadn't had a warm meal in days. Daniel watched quietly, something stirring deep within him, something he thought he'd lost forever, the quiet ache of wanting to care. The woman introduced herself as Emily. She explained haltingly that she and her son Liam had been evicted after she lost her job at a local store that shut down unexpectedly. Her husband had left months earlier, taking what little savings they had. Since then, they'd been staying in shelters, sometimes sleeping in their car. "I was just hoping to buy him a small meal," she whispered. "But when I saw how much everything cost, She trailed off, ashamed. Daniel felt a heaviness in his throat. He remembered a time when he'd walked through similar storms, after his wife Sarah died. He'd lost focus at work, made mistakes, and the business that once thrived under his care had collapsed. His home, once full of laughter, now echoed only with silence. He too had felt that quiet humiliation, of needing help but not knowing how to ask. He called the waitress over and ordered 2 more meals, burgers, fries, and a slice of pie each. When Emily protested softly, he stopped her with a shake of his head. "No child should go hungry," he said. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere around the booth began to shift. The rain outside faded into a steady hum, the kind that makes the world feel small and safe. Liam told Daniel about his favorite cartoon and how he wanted to be a builder, like the men who fix big buildings. Daniel chuckled at that, his eyes glinting for the first time in a long while. "A builder, huh? That's a good job, honest work. Emily watched the exchange with a fragile smile. You remind him of his grandfather, she said softly. He used to build things too. For the first time that night, Daniel smiled. It felt foreign on his face, but it was real. Hours seemed to melt away in that little diner. The three of them talked about small things, silly things, the kind of conversations that make time gentler. Daniel learned that Emily used to dream of starting a small bakery. I always loved the smell of bread baking, she said. It smells like hope. That line lingered in his heart long after the words left her lips. As the clock neared midnight, the waitress came to clear their plates. Emily began rummaging through her bag, pulling out a few wrinkled dollar bills and coins, but Daniel reached across and stopped her hand. Keep it, he said. You've already paid more than enough tonight. She looked at him, her eyes welling up. You don't even know us, she whispered. Daniel took a deep breath. Maybe not, but I know what it's like to feel forgotten. Her tears broke then, quiet but uncontrollable. Liam leaned against her shoulder, half asleep, his small hand resting on Daniel's coat sleeve like a wordless thank you. When they finally left, Daniel walked them out to the parking lot, holding his umbrella over the boy. The rain had softened into a drizzle, and the air smelled clean, like a promise. He watched as Emily buckled Liam into the back seat of an old, dented car. Before she got in, she turned to him. You gave us more than a meal tonight, she said. You gave us a moment of normal. He nodded, unable to find the right words. As they drove away, their taillights fading into the dark, Daniel stood alone again. But this time, the loneliness felt different. It wasn't heavy. It was quiet, thoughtful. Over the next few days, he couldn't stop thinking about them. He asked around town, hoping to find out where they'd gone, but no one knew. Something in him refused to let it end there. So one rainy afternoon, he drove to the old part of town, where he'd heard a few families sometimes gathered at a small shelter near the church. And there, beneath the cracked welcome sign, he saw them again. Emily and Liam sitting on a bench, sharing a blanket. He parked his truck and walked toward them. Emily looked up, startled, but when she saw his kind eyes, she smiled faintly. I've been looking for you, he said. I have an offer, not charity, just something that might help both of us. He told her about an old bakery building he still owned downtown, one his wife had once dreamed of restoring before she passed. It's been empty for years, he said. I was thinking, maybe we could fix it up. You bake, I build. What do you say? For a moment she didn't answer. Then tears filled her eyes as she nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, I'd love that. And that's how it began. Two broken souls building something new together. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the old bakery transformed. The cracked tiles were replaced, the faded paint revived, the scent of freshly baked bread filled the air again. Emily named it Second Chance Bakery. The first day they opened, the little shop was packed. Locals stopped by for coffee and pastries, drawn not just by the smell, but by the story. The man who gave a stranger a seat at his table, and the woman who reminded him what kindness could rebuild. Daniel found purpose again, not in wealth or success, but in connection. Liam became like the grandson he never had, following him around the bakery, helping fix shelves and hammer nails. Emily found not only stability but friendship, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Months later, on Daniel's 49th birthday, Emily and Liam surprised him with a small cake in the shape of a hammer and a loaf of bread. For the builder who helped us rebuild, the note read. He laughed, really laughed, and for the first time since Sarah's passing, his heart felt whole again. That night, after closing, Daniel stood outside the bakery, looking through the window at the warm light spilling out, at Emily wiping the counter, at Liam laughing as he licked icing from his fingers, and he realized he hadn't eaten alone after all. Fate had simply been saving him a different kind of meal. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us spread stories that remind people how small acts of kindness can change lives forever. Special request. Comment below with one word, kindness. if you believe the world needs more people like Daniel and Emily. As the last lights of the bakery dimmed that night, Daniel whispered to the empty street, "Thank you." He wasn't sure if he was thanking God, fate, or a hungry little boy who'd walked into his life, but it didn't matter, because in that simple, quiet act of sharing a meal, Daniel had rediscovered something far greater than food or company. He'd found his way back home, to hope.